Hey, this is ZSH Zoo Tours, and today we're in the Czech Republic in Prague. Prague Zoo is absolutely massive, 143 acres of land, and it is full of some of the rarest animals in the world. It's one of Europe's best zoos. Let's go. The entrance is pretty low-key. There's nothing to tell you you're about to enter such a massive and incredible zoo. But once you get through the entrance, the first habitat that you see is for the red panda. Always best if you want to see these guys to get to the zoo early, because instead of just sleeping in the trees, you can catch them when they're still active. And just look at this little dude. I'm so glad I got here early. He was exploring his whole habitat, running around, jumping through the rocks, climbing up his trees. It was the most active I've ever seen a red panda in a zoo. I could probably have gone home at this point and been pretty happy having seen this, but we've got a lot more to get through. Let's check out the first statement building in the zoo, the Indonesian jungle. This 1900 square metre indoor jungle is home to some of the rarest animals on Earth, and some of the cutest, starting with the Asian smooth-coated otter. Not as often seen in zoos as the small clawed otter. These are slightly larger, but still incredibly cute. This is a really cute little habitat for them. They've got an island here, which extends quite a way back. Lots of private areas for them where they can't be seen. And then the water body in front, which gives them loads of room for swimming and diving. Looks like this one's going to go for a swim now. You can get really, really close to them here. You can see how close to the barriers I am. Amazing views. You can hear this one calling, these little chirps. And then going for a little swim. It's really hot and atmospheric in here. And I think in terms of European zoos, this is probably my second favourite tropical house I've ever been to. Just beaten by Leipzig's, which is absolutely massive, and we'll be seeing that next week. There's some beautiful fish in here as well. I think this is a freshwater pufferfish. But the animal I was most excited to see in here was the Chinese pangolin. I've never seen one of these before. They are incredibly rare, sadly. These animals are hunted for use in completely pointless Chinese medicine, and Prague Zoo has managed to breed 2 of them within the past year, the first zoo in the world to do so. The main part of the jungle is given over to 2 separate habitats for orangutan, and they've got a juvenile here, and also a baby as well. And again, the viewing is pretty spectacular here. Prague Zoo has been breeding orang since 1961, when the first orang ever born in the Czech Republic was born here. They've got 2 habitats separated by the water body here. We'll head on over to the other side, and you can see this is absolutely adorable. We've got a female orang holding a baby. The adult male is on this side as well. You can see the door at the back of the habitat opening up, and he'll be coming through there in a second. There he is. Male orangs are absolutely magnificent. The length of their fur, it's like a cape. And with both sides full, it's just such an amazing place to be. And just watch these apes going about their lives. All the orangs you see here were born at Prague Zoo. Their lifespans are very similar to human ones, so it's difficult to breed large numbers of orangs. But Prague Zoo does an excellent job of it. Just look at her balancing on that log with those finger-like toes. Overall, this is just an amazing jungle house. I had an incredible time in here. But it's time to move on and check out the zoo's Australian section. This part of the zoo is built on top of a big cliff, and the views from up here are pretty spectacular. You can see them behind this swamp wallaby, and later on we'll go to the bottom of the cliff and we're going to see some of the most amazing natural landscapes I've ever seen in a zoo. But all that is to come. We'll stick with the Australian section for now. These swamp wallabies are really unusual. I've never seen these before, but next door to them is an animal you'll see much more often in Australian areas, the emu. This is about as close as you're ever going to get to an emu outside of a walkthrough exhibit. They're such fascinating birds. Their crazy hair, it looks so scruffy. And then they've got that beautiful blue colouring as well as all the grey, white and black. I always enjoy seeing emus. Next to them is something much rarer and much more impressive, a cassowary. This is the southern cassowary that lives in Australia. They are absolutely immense and about as close to a dinosaur as you're ever going to get in real life. They have a sizable habitat here, similar to the wallaby habitat you just saw, but this one came into the little shed right at the end of his habitat, and I was able to see in through a perspex viewing window. An amazing experience. Next to the cassowary is a zoo favourite, a little lorikeet walkthrough. There are loads of them in here, as active as always. It's a lot of fun being surrounded by this many of these charismatic little birds. There are feeders all around this habitat, so they've got loads of different places that they can eat. One of them just dive bombed my head there, was not expecting that. I didn't get to see all the Australian animals in the zoo. They've got 2 Australian areas. They also have Tasmanian devils, common wombats, and I think 3 other species of wallaby. The path through the main Australian area has another side to it with a small South American area, including a real rarity. Before we get to that though, there's a coati to see, such mischievous little animals, and then a little group of bush dogs. I just caught them going back into their house. But the thing that really caught my eye was this, a Tayra. I have never seen one of these in a zoo, but they are really cool. Sort of a weasel polecat looking animal. He was ranging all over his habitat. And then some hutia as well, or giant rats with some little babies. And then onto one of the zoo's most famous breeding successes, Przewalski's horse. Prague Zoo has been breeding Przewalski's horses for over 90 years now, and it played a significant role in the return of this species to the wild after it went extinct. The zoo has this huge Gobi exhibit complex. It covers 6,500 square meters, and it's really beautiful. You get such an amazing view of the horses. There's also this yurt where you can go inside and it shows you all about their schemes to breed the horses here and how they return them to the Mongolian steppe where they once roamed. There are numerous populations out there in Mongolia now. It's one of zoos in general's greatest breeding successes. The programs all over the world to bring these horses back to the wild. Prague Zoo is one of the leading exponents of it. I love the habitat as well. The rock work in here is so good. The dusty plains and the yellow rocks. The area is surrounded by more plains animals, including one I was really desperate to see, but sadly, this is the best view that I got of it. The Pallas cat, Bactrian camels, and other animals of the plains as well. And it's not just the plains of Central Asia, the plains of North America are also represented by these adorable prairie dogs. Not quite as engaging a habitat as we saw last week at Tiergarten Schönbrunn, but always a treat to see these little guys. Let's move on to the Northern Forest. The area starts with this beautiful statue, and you've probably noticed throughout this video that modern zoo theming is not something Prague Zoo does very often. And I guess when your zoo is set in the middle of a beautiful temperate forest with a giant cliff face running through the middle of it, why bother removing all this natural environment and replacing it with cheesy zoned theming? Much better to leave the forest as it is and just subtly build the habitats into it, and it's such an amazing place to walk around. You are pretty much surrounded by forest the entire time that you're here. The Northern Forest is home, as you would expect, to animals from the Northern Hemisphere, such as this beautiful moose. There's also wisents, or European bison, another breeding success, and an animal much more rarely seen in zoos, the takin. These animals are absolutely crazy. They look like a mix of about 4 different animals. Really fascinating. I have never seen them in a zoo before, so I really enjoyed seeing them here. These are, I believe, Sichuan takin, which have this beautiful golden coat. They've got a nice little family group here in another very simple habitat with log walls and a nice big pile of rocks in the foreground. There's one thing I love in zoos, it's giant piles of rocks. We've also got some collared peccaries, and the climax of the Northern Forest, the big cat section. They have Amur tigers and Amur leopards here. Really impressive animals and horribly rare in the wild. Here's the tiger. And here's the leopard. Magnificent animals. At the top of the Northern Forest is a huge area that's been set aside for a brand new polar bear habitat, which I have to say is sorely needed because the zoo's polar bears currently live in a habitat that has essentially been there since about 1930. It's been redesigned since, but it is horribly small for these animals. You can see here, but this new habitat they're building looks absolutely massive. Loads of different terrain changes, lots of space for the polar bears. I'm sure they're going to be very happy there. Now, I mentioned the overall lack of specific theming in this zoo, but we're about to go to the most heavily themed area in the whole zoo. It even has its own soundtrack playing through speakers. Elephant Valley. This is the biggest and the best elephant habitat I have ever seen in a zoo. It is absolutely immense. There are so many parts to it. I think I spent half an hour just at the elephant habitat, and I pretty much didn't stop walking at any point. There are so many views here, so many different areas that the elephants have access to, all beautifully landscaped with all the rock work, and then the local forest in the background. As usual in Prague Zoo, there are babies and juveniles everywhere. They have such breeding success here. These are Asian elephants, of course, and all the Asian theming around here is really well done. Loads of little temples, statues, and ruins in the habitat itself. Look at this little baby one here, so cute. Eventually, after much walking, you can go into their indoor habitat, get a rare peek into the behind the scenes of elephant keeping. A lot of the time in zoos, these parts are mostly off-show, but you get a good look around it here. There's also a really nice historical display showing how the elephants used to be kept here a very long time ago. It really is the best elephant experience I've seen in a zoo. Next up is the zoo's African area. It starts in this little dell filled with rocks, and there's habitats nestled in amongst the rocks, like this one for the yellow-footed mongoose, the meerkat's big brother. It's a really immersive little area, the way you walk amongst the standing rocks, and then you've just got these little habitats everywhere. Next to it is something much bigger, the hippo habitat. There's also these beautiful Dharma gazelles, but the centerpiece of the African area is this, a huge savanna. This habitat is absolutely massive, and there's all sorts of African ungulates in here. Nubian giraffe, sable antelope, blesboks, ostriches, oryxes, leshway, zebra, and something I found particularly interesting, the European ground squirrel, which actually lives wild here. Saw a few of these running around. They occur naturally in the surrounding forest and have been encouraged to come into this habitat, and the zoo conserves them here, but they are completely wild. Surrounding the savannah are habitats for some smaller animals. Meerkats, of course, can't have a zoo without meerkats. They're an animal that's always good to see, even though you see them in every zoo you go to. And also something much more unusual, aardvarks. Being nocturnal, they were asleep when I was here, but even asleep, they're still absolutely fascinating. One of the most unique animals on the planet. And they lead us around to another big statement building in the zoo, the Jar Reserve. This mixed indoor and outdoor area is where the zoo keeps its breeding group of gorilla. There's lots of other animals here as well, like these beautiful colobus. And on the inside, it's really highly themed. Lots of logs and plants and misters as well, which really set the humid atmosphere in here. There's some gorgeous little bats as well. These are straw-coloured fruit bats, one of the newest animals at Prague Zoo. And as you can see, they are very active, and the visibility in their habitat is really good. I'm a big fan of bats, always a pleasure to see them. And next to the bats is a mixed habitat for de Brazza's monkey, which is really beautiful, and Red River hogs as well. I really like the photo wall at the back of the habitat that makes it look larger than it is. Again, lots of juveniles in this habitat, as you see all over this zoo. De Brazza's monkey is the largest species in the Guenon family, which also includes Diana monkeys and rollaway monkeys, along with many others. Here's one of the Red River hogs. I don't think he wanted to be on camera. There's also a really cool exhibit called the African Undergrowth, which just features loads of little creepy crawlies, arthropods, etc. Very rarely see zoos showcasing this, and I actually really liked this tiny little habitat. The main draw in this house, of course, is the zoo's breeding colony of lowland gorillas. They have this indoor habitat here, and then they also got a large outdoor habitat which they share with the colobus we saw earlier. Let's head on to the giant cliff face that I mentioned earlier. On the way there, we're just going to make a quick stop for another species of otter, the North American river otter. This is the first time I've seen these in a zoo, I think. Another beautiful forested habitat here, and a big area of water for them to swim in. This was one of the first habitats I came to. There was no sign of them, so I came back later on my way to the cliff face, and I'm very glad I did. This otter was having all sorts of fun swimming around in the water. I'm assuming bits of fish and stuff are thrown in for them to find throughout the day. He's got something there. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I could watch otters forever. But it's time to descend the cliff face that splits this zoo in two. The first thing you see as you walk down the cliff face is the Geo Trail. This is something I've not seen in the zoo before. It's really cool. A collection of geodes and fossils in giant rocks right next to the path. All sorts of things to see. And when you get to the bottom, the zoo has actually built habitats into the almost sheer rock face. It looks absolutely amazing and full of the animals that live in these areas. These are called taars. It's incredible to see them in something that replicates their natural environment so well, and you also get a close-up view of them here. Very cute. And then next to them are turs. Not sure who came up with the name for these animals. These are West Caucasian turs. They live on the Western Caucasus Mountains on the Russia-Georgia border and nowhere else in the world. We've got a male, a female, and then two babies here. are so at home on this incredibly steep slope. This is definitely the coolest hoofstock habitat I've ever seen. Guess that's the advantage of building your zoo right here. No need for fake rock work here. And it's just an incredible vista to look at. There's even wild storks nesting in the trees at the top of the path here. An incredible sight to see. At the bottom of the cliff face is a set of aviaries for all sorts of different birds. Got some bearded vultures here, and they are built directly into the rock face, which makes them really unique looking. You get a great view of this bearded vulture here. Some of the aviaries are walkthroughs as well. We've got one for waterfowl here. This is the Danube Delta aviary. It opened in 2004 and it's inhabited by various European species of waterfowl and birds that make their home near water. It's a very pretty area to walk through, and some of the animals are very happy with being in close vicinity to humans, like this duck here. There are a lot of amazing aviaries and birds in this zoo, and we're going to take a look at some of the best of them now. This is the Sichuan, which features 20 species of birds from the foothills of the Himalayas. Elsewhere, there's this incredible eagle, and round the corner, the bird wetlands, which features one of the coolest birds in the world, the shoebill. This absolute beast of a bird is so cool. It's over 1 meter tall, with a wingspan of up to 2.5 meters. And named, of course, because of its enormous bill, which does actually look like a shoe. These birds live in the swamps of Africa and mainly eat fish, including fish as big as lungfish and bashir, but they'll also happily eat frogs, snakes, baby crocodiles, and even Nile monitors. You can see it chomping away on a fish here. I narrowly missed out on seeing these at Bird Paradise in Singapore. They were a no-show, so really excited to see them here at Prague Zoo. And just look at it, it is magnificent. Now, from one of the coolest birds in the world, it's time to go and check out some of the coolest reptiles in the world at one of the zoo's reptile houses. At the entrance, one of those wild storks we saw earlier, just flying over. And inside, Komodo dragons. I have never seen as many Komodo dragons as I saw at Prague Zoo. They have them in multiple locations with multiple dragons in each location. They were the first zoo in Europe to breed Komodo dragons back in 2004. And they've been breeding them successfully ever since, so you'll see multiple adults and juveniles all over the zoo. There's a juvenile here, and since 2007 they've bred more than 60 Komodo dragons. On the outside of the house are giant tortoises, and next door to these, something even more impressive, from one of the world's largest tortoises to the world's largest amphibian, the giant salamander. The Vela Mlecarium contains what must be the largest collection of Chinese giant salamanders outside of China itself. I counted at least 5 of them in here, and they are absolutely massive. This is, I think, the 3rd time I've seen giant salamanders, and definitely the biggest collection and best exhibit for them. Our time at Prague Zoo is almost over, sadly, but while we check out a couple more primate habitats, there is one more house I want to show you, which again is the best exhibit for this animal that I have ever seen. The Gharial house. We've got 2 Gharials here, with turtles sat on their back. Absolutely amazing sight. I've seen Gharials in a fair few zoos now, but this is the best habitat that I've seen for them, or certainly the best view that I've had at them. Absolutely incredible. That is a fitting way to wrap up the tour of Prague Zoo, one of the finest zoos I've ever seen in Europe. Make sure you subscribe, because next week we're going to be visiting another of Europe's great zoos, Leipzig. Thanks for watching. Bye.